to an international special of the Rose Tinted Football Podcast. Chris couldn't make it to today's recording, so you're going to have to put up with me talking rubbish to myself. Where else to start but with Ireland? And after a pretty encouraging display against Portugal, where, okay, the result didn't go our way, but we looked like we were starting to improve. It looked like, things were coming back for Ireland. We end up having another drab performance against Azerbaijan. How we can go from holding Ronaldo quiet for 89 minutes to barely being able to do anything against a team ranked 105th in the world. So against Portugal, it was backs against the wall, of course, for most of it, but what do you do with a team who are ranked 8 in the world? You have to defend. Ireland couldn't go out there and play football, but when they did get the ball on that rare occasion, they played some good football and caused Portugal some problems. It looked like one of those vintage Ireland away performances against a big team. Like we've had them in the past. We had them against Holland in 2000. We had it against Russia with Richard Dunn's unbelievable one-man performance. We've had games against Italy in Bari. Like we've had these games. We were able to bring it up to these big teams, and it looked like things were starting to go our way, and only for that man Ronaldo coming up in the last minute, and then after injury time coming up with 2 goals and breaking the international scoring record. We looked like we could get out with something. It looked like a win at one stage, then it looked like we could hold out for a draw. It was encouraging. Okay, that last minute goal, it's a sucker punch, but it's still, there was so much positivity to take out of that. So going into the Azerbaijan game, we're on a pretty good high. Like it's not like the result didn't go our way, but the performance was good. It's something to build on. And then it goes back to the rubbish before it. Not once did we look like we were going to create a clear-cut opportunity. And again, we're relying on defenders. We're relying on big, tall defenders coming up for either a set piece or getting on the end of a cross, or there's no creativity. There is a scary lack of creativity in that Irish team, and an even worse deficiency in scoring goals. The team that played Portugal, for example, they had 8 goals between them going into that game. 8 international goals. Ronaldo went into it on 109. It's just not good enough. And then even against Azerbaijan, there was 19 goals between them, but that was only through the inclusion of James McLean. But James McLean shouldn't be starting an Ireland game. He's had his moments, like he's the goals against Georgia and the goal against Wales. Like he's had his moments and he's done well for Ireland, and nobody can fault his work rate. But at this stage in 2021, he's not an Ireland starter. And questions have to be asked over the fact that probably Ireland's best attacking player against Portugal was Jamie McGrath. And Jamie McGrath is dropped for the inclusion of James McLean. It doesn't make sense. Like, everybody wants Kenny to succeed, but he is making mistakes, and he is making pretty big mistakes. Luxembourg, we all seen what happened there. Azerbaijan is something similar, and only for Shane Duffy it would have been the exact same, and this would have been just as bad as the defeat to Luxembourg, if not worse, because Luxembourg a couple of days beforehand had beaten Azerbaijan. There are big problems. We all know there's big problems, and it's deep-rooted problems through the FAI, through how young players are brought up in this country. While the GAA and the IRFU were pumping millions into their youth development, the FAI were spending thousands on a James Bond party for their chief executive. Like, that just shows. And it also, one thing I hate when the argument comes out with youth development is, oh, well, in Ireland, we have the Gaelic, we have the rugby. A lot of countries have multiple sports, but they still manage to have a functioning football association. And a lot of our problems go back to that football association. You can go back, and it's not just John Delaney, it was before John Delaney, and it will probably be after John Delaney as well, there has been a history of corruption in that association. It is rife, or at least it was rife, and I hope it's a past tense. I hope that the FAI are learning from their mistakes. I hope that they're making the changes necessary for football in this country to succeed and grow. And there's no reason why. At the minute, we're looking at the worst Irish team for generations, decades. Like, you go back to the 40s and 50s of Irish football. You had Kerry, who was captain of Manchester United. After him, you had the likes of John Giles. After John Giles, you had the likes of Liam Brady. And then into the 80s, you hit the gold mine, where you had not only young, good Irish players, but you had some Scottish and English players who had grandparents who were Irish. But we had a team full of what at the time was the first division in England. And they were all playing with the likes of Ray Hampton. Ronnie Whelan played for Liverpool, who won countless league titles, European Cups. They were first team players for that team. Even into the 90s then, you had the likes of Roy Keane and Dennis Irwin playing for the Manchester United team that was doing the exact same as the Liverpool team in the 80s. And then the noughties come, and suddenly we don't have players who are playing with the top teams in England anymore, but they're still playing in the Premier League. And then it goes down another notch, where it's players who are playing with yo-yo teams who come from the Championship to the Premier League their whole career. And now we're left with the only player in a solid first team Premier League is Seamus Coleman, who's the right back. And don't get me wrong, Seamus Coleman is a fabulous footballer and he's a great right back and he served this country extraordinarily well. But your right back can't be your best player. There's only so much he can do. And that is the problem we face. We have a young 19-year-old goalkeeper who plays for Manchester City. Is he going to stay with Manchester City? I don't see Ederson going anywhere anytime soon. Chances are he's going to transfer away from Man City, or he's never going to play first team football. Same can be said with Kelleher at Liverpool, again with a big club in England. But is Alisson going anywhere anytime soon? And these are the problems. Even Troy Parrott at Tottenham, he doesn't look like he's going to get a look in, and his record on loan at various different clubs, it doesn't look overly promising. Injury aside at Millwall, he hasn't really lit the world on fire. And this is the problem we face going into the future. Like, the under-21 team is pretty good and are getting good results. And again, that's from work of Stephen Kenny. He's implemented a style of football he wants to be played. But do we have to wait for this team to come up? Do we have to wait for the under-21s to finally come to and graduate to senior level? And what level are they going to be playing at when they do graduate to senior level? There are massive problems, and unfortunately there doesn't seem to be many solutions at the moment. And with Stephen Kenny, I'd love him to succeed. His track record was proven at Dundalk, but these results, the style of football might not be, but these results are starting to mimic Steve Staunton. So I don't know if it's the level of management, or does Dundalk taint people? Probably not, but it is a worrying time for him. He cannot afford another loss to Luxembourg or a draw with Azerbaijan. He's played 4 games in this group. Ireland have played their 2 toughest away and 2 easiest home games, and they have 1 point to show. They should have been looking at a minimum of 6 points, possibly 7, but they're leaving these 4 games with just a solitary point. It's not good enough, and things will have to change. I'm not saying the manager has to change. I think he should be given time, but look what's going on at Northern Ireland. That's a prime example. A lot of people try and say, look at what's going on with Wales. Wales have Gareth Bale. We don't have Gareth Bale, and we don't have any Gareth Bales coming through. Neither do Scotland, neither do Northern Ireland. And you look at the results that especially Northern Ireland are getting. Like on a day we drew 1-1 with Azerbaijan at home, they were beating Lithuania 4-1 away from home. That's a result we could only dream of. And that is your problem. And having given that cheery outlook on Irish football, I just want to touch on the crazy going-ons in South America, in particular for Brazil and Argentina. I don't know if any of you have seen this, but it's worth searching on social media, Twitter, YouTube. I've seen a couple of videos of it. It's just madness. This pandemic that we've all suffered for nearly the last 2 years it's driven some of us demented. But what happened in Brazil, it's another level of madness. So Brazil and Argentina called up numerous players from the Premier League. However, 9 players that Brazil had called up were refused release. However, Argentina had 4 Premier League players join up with the team. Now, however, a slight problem is that in the UK, Brazil is on the red list of countries. The UK is on the red list for Brazil. So that means that any non-Brazilian flying in has to quarantine for 14 days. The Premier League players in question for Argentina were Emiliano Martinez and Emiliano Buendia, and Spurs' Christian Romero and Giovanni Lo Celso. They arrived from Venezuela, but according to the Department of Health in Brazil, had falsified their health forms. So instead of stopping them entering the country, which would generally happen most places, they allowed the players to join up with the Argentina national team, allowed them to travel to the Maracanã, allowed them to get changed, allowed them to warm up, allowed them to take the pitch. Kick-off ensued, and within 10 minutes, Brazilian police and health officials stormed the pitch looking to detain and deport the 4 players in question. It is a crazy scene, made even crazier by Lionel Messi and Neymar trying to persuade the police and health officials to just let the game go ahead, or at least find out information on what's going on. It's amazing how Brazil allowed this game to not only go ahead, but kick off and then wait the first 10 minutes. Were they waiting for somebody to score before the game on? Did they have first goal scorer maybe? I don't know. Somebody might have had Neymar for first goal. But it's just crazy. I encourage everybody to go online, sort it out. It's everything you think about South American football. Pure, utter madness. So we'll be back to normal next week, Chris included, to look over everything on the Premier League weekend, including Ronaldo's debut against Newcastle, Leicester Man City, Chelsea Villa, the relegation 6-pointer between Arsenal and Norwich, and then Leeds and Liverpool on the Sunday. We will cover everything in detail, give you our opinions. I'll probably say something negative about Arsenal and some of their supporters, and probably, hopefully, give you a rendition of Viva Ronaldo. Or I might just stay quiet. Who knows? But anyway, until next week, bye.